What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC, episode 116. We're here to recap the SEC spring meetings that wrapped up last week. Going to talk about some expectations for teams in the SEC, kind of what we would consider a success or a failure of the 2024 season. We want to talk about some top newcomers, top freshmen coming into the league, like guys that we think can make instant impacts right away. So we're going to get right into it with the SEC spring meetings. And obviously, one of the big talking points, kind of we touched on our last podcast, it broke while we were recording, is the House versus the NCAA, lawsuit settlement. That was a big talking point. And, even though that came out about 10 days ago, there's not really any format guidelines with that right now. It's not been finalized yet. So although it was a talking point, there's nothing really settled with that at the moment because they're still waiting for it to be finalized and what the revenue sharing model is going to look like. Part of that settlement too is paying, I believe from 2016 to 2020, like paying back pay on NIL dollars to former athletes. So that part obviously has to be finalized as well. So there's a lot of moving parts still to go with this. I believe it's going to be brought to the judge in July, is what reports were saying. So, in the next month or two, should get a little bit more clarity for some of the SEC leadership. ADs, coaches. I think everyone will have a little bit better understanding in the coming months ahead. But the reports were saying potentially up to 22% of revenue sharing could go to the athletes. So that's pretty big margin. So a couple of talking points during the meetings. Obviously, when you're having to share 22%, you're obviously going to look for other avenues to bring more revenue in to kind of cover that expense. And there's been talk about, corporate logos being on jerseys potentially or on the field, different spots on the field potentially for different prices. There's been talk about like what's the role of the collectives going to be once the revenue sharing model is in place, if that does come to fruition. What's the collectives like? What's their role going to be now? Is that not going to be as big of a deal since the revenue's being shared directly with the players now? Just a lot of moving parts, and like I said, not a whole lot of clarity yet on that. Like I said, that'll be something we have to see over the coming months. But just kind of want to get your thoughts on some of this and what were some of the, I guess, what were your takeaways from what was kind of being said, in Destin last week?
There were some things, I didn't like at all. And then some things I was just kind of confused about. Like, I'm wondering where the 2016 came in. Is that just from the people that could have, like, just missed the NIL era? Is that like, I'm wondering where the year they chose to start the back pay or to be the furthest back they go. I'm wondering what was the final cause of making that decision? How is all that really going to work? That's really interesting to me, but I don't fully understand it completely. So I'm ready for all the details and the finalization of everything to come out. So it'll be explained to me in layman's terms, because when I'm reading all that legal, I cannot wrap my head around what they're saying, to be completely honest with you. But Cam touched on it. The logos on the jerseys and on the field, potentially, not a huge fan. I really don't care if they're on the 25-yard line. There's different numerical slots, obviously. So if you pay $1 million, or it's like 1 point something $1 million, you can have your logo on the 25-yard line. If you pay, I believe it's 4 or 5 million, somewhere in that ballpark, you can have your logo at midfield. Now, this is not finalized yet. This is not a guarantee. This is just a proposal of how they're going to fund all of this. But if you pay $4 to $5 million as a sponsor, you can have your logo at midfield, so it will no longer be the team's logo. And then if you also pay the same price as if you have your logo at midfield, you pay the same price, you can have your logo on the jerseys on the shoulder as a patch. So I don't really like it, number one, because what are we, soccer? You know what I mean? Like, all these jerseys are, traditional. They don't need to be changed. Nothing needs to be added and make it look different. I understand they gotta fund it somehow, but I stay away from the jerseys. I really, really, really do not like that. The 25-yard line is not that big of a deal because you're going to see it on TV. You're going to see it in the stands, but it's not going to draw away and take away from the field and what makes, man, college football is so beautiful and everything is so great because of the tradition. 100%. That's what separates it from any other sport on the planet is the tradition that's in college football. And the tradition goes down to how everything looks and how everything goes on a game day. If you've ever been to an Alabama game day, their game day operations, once everybody's in the stands and that the 60 minutes from game time starts kicking down or whatever it is, their band's going to come out at the exact same time. They're going to do the exact same thing. The cheerleaders are going to do the exact same thing. The fans are going to do the exact same chants. At Auburn, the mic man does the same chants. The eagle flies. The band comes out. The drum major throws the spear into the center or the middle of the field. Everybody, it's a tradition, not just in who they're playing, the rivalries of what the school is, but it's everything that encompasses that. And in that game day and the environment that it's in, if the field is changed and it just looks different, it would look different on TV. It would feel different when you're there. I think they're just taking it a little too far, and it would take away from the game day atmosphere. I feel like I could be wrong. I could be taking a stretch because it honestly is just grass and paint on a field. But am I off base on this? Do you feel?
No, I agree totally. I mean, I definitely don't like the corporatization, I guess, of sports, I mean, you don't, I mean, you get a little bit used to it, when the NBA first started doing it, MLB has started doing it now, I was like, man, I hate that idea. And then you kind of get used to seeing it a little bit more, so it becomes a little less unusual, I guess. But yeah, especially in
They're at
college
least on the
football,
baseline or something. They're not center court.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't like that honestly, but I'm sure that's probably something that's gonna be headed this way. A big topic at the meetings were due to this House, NCAA settlement is no more scholarship limit, I believe. So there's just gonna be like a roster cap. So there's a real fear that like walk-ons are no longer going to be a thing, and coaches were very adamant about this, like across the board. We're saying like we don't want walk-ons to go away. Like we don't want our roster trimmed down to say just 85 players. There's some real concerns, health and safety concerns, because it's like in the NFL you have a certain roster size. Well, if the injury bug hits you, you can go to the waiver wire or your practice squad and go
That's it right
find
there.
and bring people on, to fill those gaps. And, if you're only at 85 or whatever and you got 15 guys hurt, you can't just go add more, um, so there's real concern about that. And coaches were really adamant, about that, not wanting that tinkered with, wanting kind of the format that's in place to stay. I would think, they don't want rosters trimmed down from 110 or 120 to, 85. So you can kind of, obviously, you have 85 scholarships. And I think, as far as I know, you can pretty much have as many walk ons as you want. Most teams, Power Five teams will have probably 30 or 40. So, that roster is usually around 120 or so for a lot of your Power Five schools, and probably a lot of your Group of Fives as well. But yeah, so coaches were really, strong about that, not wanting that, tinkered with, since scholarship, or I guess the limit could be, trimmed down a little bit. Also
If that's
another
the
topic
case,
of discussion. Yeah, go ahead.
you touched on it. The practice squad in the NFL, that's the biggest thing. 90% of the guys that are walk-ons, if not 100% of them, not being rude or crude or anything, the first year or two that they're there, they're a filler for a spot that needs to be filled on the defensive side scout team or the offensive side scout team.
Yeah.
They're there to be a body for the starters to go against, to get them a good look for that coming Saturday. That's 100% what they're there for. It doesn't matter if they get hurt. Obviously, nobody wants them to get hurt, and they're a person, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt your team, doesn't hurt your roster if they get hurt, because they're not going to play. They're not on the 85 scholarship guys. So like if you're dwindling through a lot of guys before they're going on the field. Like that's a bad Saturday for your boys, but they're
Mm-hmm.
there to give your guys a look for that coming Saturday and to be their job is to be the best practice guy they can because that's going to help you win a championship. So if they have a chance obviously to get hurt out there because they're playing the game pretty much every single day of the week. And then you take those guys away, you don't allow them to come at all. Now everybody you have is a scholarship guy that you depend on and could possibly play on Saturdays, and then they're getting banged up and hurt in practice, makes them a little slower on game days. Even if they're not hurt, they're not 100% because what they're going through in practice. So it's a full effect of everything. And then, obviously got to look at it from Kirby's perspective. He's like, man, I'm getting these diamonds in the rough through these walk-ons. I mean, Stetson Bennett took him to a national championship. Ladd McConkey was up there, one of the top receivers in college football. And that he was on the field, it was, you better have two guys on him at all times because he's going to get open. Like he's enjoying these walk-on guys. He's finding diamonds in the rough, but he don't just, go out and find them on film. I mean, they come in there and they prove themselves in the practice, playing on scout team. I don't. It's not good for the game as a whole, and I don't think it's good for the future of college athletics because some guys don't get the opportunity to go to Division I on by scholarship or by being recruited. They just choose to go on their own accord and go prove themselves, and they're able. Some of them it works out, and if that's taken away completely, I mean, it's bad for the game as a whole.
Yeah, no, I agree. I hope that's something they don't tinker with because, like I said, and you're talking about potentially trimming down rosters at a time where you're expanding the amount of games that teams are playing or
Mm-hmm.
could potentially play. So it's like it doesn't make much sense, honestly, from that standpoint. You're asking teams to potentially play with much less guys on the roster, and like you said, it's more from a practice perspective and getting the team prepared to play in the games. But like I said, a lot of times your depth is tested, and it may not be like your whole entire team. But if you only got 85 players, you can only have a certain amount of guys at each position. So what if you get an injury bug at one position? You don't have any guys you can go to fill that. So it is a big concern. Like I said, and you're asking them to play more games now too. So it just doesn't make much sense from that standpoint. I know coaches are very serious about, not wanting that changed and not wanting to trim your rosters down, especially by that amount of margin that.
I don't know why college football would want to take that away from itself. It's through walk-ons, it's given itself some of the greatest stories. I mean, Johnny Manziel was a former walk-on. I mean, you could go and name a list of 150 guys that is turned out to be a fantastic, good press for college football and a good thing for them to help grow their game. I know it's not them necessarily, but the people in charge of it are trying to cut that out completely. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about the game, and to take it away completely is criminal to me. I get it's basically semi-professional athletics now, but it's still college ball, and it some of the changes, it's hard for me to roll with. I'm going to get there. I'm obviously still going to watch it. We say that over and over again. We know we're going to be in our seats every Saturday, tuned into every game, having 10 televisions, watching all of them. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to be happy with what I'm watching. I'm going to be satisfied and enjoy it. But the circumstances of what the situation of what it's in, I'm not going to enjoy.
Yeah, yeah. I'm hopeful. Like I said, I'm hoping they keep the roster size at a limit that makes sense and not trim it down to just what your 85, scholarship, players will be. So
Somebody said it's going to end up being like NASCAR. The team's
yeah,
uniforms are going to look like a NASCAR driver's
exactly. Yeah,
ones
just
or
just
whatever.
sponsorships all up and down. So yeah, we'll see what comes of that. Another, big talking point, which to no resolution on that. That's kind of the theme of this meeting. We talked about a bunch of stuff, but we really didn't come to a resolution on much of anything. Is pretty much that's how all meetings in the history of meetings go.
We
I
could have
feel
ran that
like,
meeting.
but anyways, the future scheduling of the SEC that's been a huge topic ever since the 12-team playoffs been discussed over the last year or two. What's the SEC going to do? Are they going to stick at 8 conference games? Are they going to go to 9? what's kind of going to be the solution there. And the solution is we have no solution. But they are sticking at 8 conference games for this year and for 2025, which honestly, I mean, it makes sense because the decision really is okay, let's see how strength of schedule is going to play in a 12-team playoff. Because if you're sitting there and you're the SEC, you're already playing the toughest schedule out of anybody in college. So all your teams, I saw a strength of schedule ranking actually earlier. I think of the top, I think it was 10 or 15. I think the SEC was pretty much like all but 2 or 3 spots, basically. Just dominated strength of schedule rankings. So if you're the SEC, you're like, why are we going to add an extra loss to some of our teams, record when we're trying to, make them bowl eligible or to get in a 12 team? We want to get multiple teams in a 12-team playoff. Why are we going to do that when we're already playing the toughest schedule and we don't know exactly how strength of schedule is going to be viewed in a 12-team format? So the decision is like, hey, let's wait and see, how strength of schedule is viewed, how much is that taken into account when coming up with the final 12-team rankings. I think if it's viewed very highly, and that's like one of the highest, criteria for a 12-team playoff, I think that just makes the odds go up that the SEC will go to 9 games. I think they ultimately will, but I think they're just kind of in a wait and see mode and seeing, what the format, what the, criteria of a 12-team playoff is exactly going to be.
Yeah, I think it's going to be this way for a extended period of time because they're trying to find out financials of how they're even going to fund college football as a whole. And if the SEC is not going to get any more money for playing an extra game, they're not going to do it. Not right now. If it's not going to benefit them or hurt them one way or the other, they're not going to do it. So I think for right now, for the short term, I think we'll see 8 conference games for a while, which is fine. I mean, it's what we're used to. It's not going to make it any different or make me like it any less. It's what I'm used to. So, I mean, I'm here for it. And the rotation of the games is what I'm really, really, really looking forward to in the coming years. Just being able to play different teams at different places consistently. It's not taking 10 years for Auburn to go to the swamp again and stuff like that. So I'm excited about those. That's the number one thing I'm looking forward to in the years to come with college football. Maybe not everything else, but that for sure is the one thing I'm most excited about in the future of college football is the rotation of the teams and the parity that it's going to be around the teams playing each other. It's not going to be so consistent. That's the best thing about losing the divisions, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean that's something we've really talked about the last couple of years is like the schedule's been a little stale, with the divisions and you're only playing, what 2 teams from the other, it got to the point where you were only playing 2 teams from the East or West or whichever side you were in. Yeah, one set team as well. So yeah, you were only really rotating one team. So to me,
14 or 13 other teams. It's just that's impossible to go everywhere and play everywhere and match up with your schedule where you're not having 8 road games in a year or something like that.
Yeah, it made much more, it makes a lot more sense, especially with expanding the SEC again.
Right.
It made more sense just to do away with divisions. Like I said, our schedule is a lot more, is a lot more flexible, I guess you could say, like as far as getting those matchups that you want to see more often. Like I want to see Alabama go to the Swamp more, go to Athens more, go to Williams-Brice, go to Lexington, even though they went there last year. But yeah, I want to see, I want to play Texas and OU a good bit. I don't want to see them once every, I want to go to Texas once every 10 years, So
Right.
yeah, I think the scheduling format, like you said, has definitely been the biggest positive for me too. Um, like I said, the schedule was in the need of a shakeup, and it's definitely in a much better place, I think, than it's been here in the past, the recent little bit. Like you said, you want to have the opportunity to go watch your team play in some of those places, whether it's in person or on TV. Like like you said, I think you went to the Swamp the last time Auburn played there. It was 2019, I believe, right?
Yep.
So, if the schedule would have stayed the same like it was, you wouldn't have been back there. Could have been sooner than 10 years, but it very likely could have been 10 years.
My
Like you
kids
just
would have been 15, and I don't have kids yet. So,
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's crazy. So I'm definitely that's the biggest positive change I think they made, and the matchups that they have this year, man, they are so much more juicy than they've been here
yeah,
recently. So
absolutely.
I can't wait. Texas A&M. I did like the fact too that they made it where every SEC team will play either Texas or OU their
Yeah.
first year. So I thought that was really cool too. Like I said, adds a little more intrigue to the schedule, and gives them a taste of getting to play more like diverse teams rather than just sticking them in a division. And if they would have just got stuck in the division, they may not have played South Carolina for 7, 8 years,
Yeah.
or 6 years or whatever. So just makes a lot more sense, and I'm glad that they made that change. It was definitely a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if you go back. I mean, we could do it. It would just take a minute. If we went back and looked at Texas A&M and Missouri when they entered the league, like what was their longest wait to play a team? Because they were in that where they got stuck in a division and they rotated once every however long. So I wonder how long they were in the league before they played their final team. I bet it was a good 3 or 4 years. I really
Yeah,
bet it
I
was.
I will say this. I believe I heard this. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on this. I think I heard that Georgia has not played in College Station yet. I'm pretty positive.
And it's
I could,
been 12 years.
yeah, I don't believe they've played in College Station since A&M's been in the league. I'm pretty sure, and that just shouldn't happen. That just it shouldn't.
No.
I'm sure there's some other instances as well. I want to say I saw that on Twitter a little while back, talking about the scheduling and things like that. And
I think, if I'm not mistaken, Auburn has only played at Missouri once, maybe twice, but once or twice in 12 years.
hmm
Like
yeah,
that's incredible.
it's wild. So yeah, definitely to me that's of all the change in college football, and a lot of it's had like a negative tone, and in the headlines and stuff like that. I do think of the conference realignment and stuff like that, the spicing up the schedule has definitely been a big plus for me for sure.
Absolutely.
It
Absolutely.
needed
No
big
question.
time. So, like you said, and I think with the format they have now, that's why I don't think it's a big deal between 8 or 9. Like if it was like it used to be, there would be a bigger deal with 8 or 9 because that'd be taking away one less, across division opponent away. But now that the format's a little bit different, and the rotation of teams is much more often, to me, 8 or 9's not really that big of a deal now.
Right. Right.
So to me, it's not a big concern. Um, and especially too, like I know Alabama's really tried to schedule more Power Fives, or even some Group Five. Like for example, they've got Wisconsin this year. They've got USF. I believe next year they play Wisconsin and Florida State. So they've tried to do a better job of scheduling more Power Five games. So even if it stays at 8, they're going to be playing really quality, out of conference games too. Like it's not just going to be, Alabama A&M or whoever, So, yeah, big plus for me is the schedule change, and I'm excited. It's made me that much more excited for this season because we got some really good matchups, man. I mean, really every week is just it's going to be awesome.
Yep. Week like 3 on jam up matches.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Well, I wanted to get into a little bit talking about some expectations you mentioned earlier, a talking point for us. What would be what would we consider a success and a failure for a lot of teams in the SEC? Um, and just kind of to kick it
Mainly the
off.
top tier teams, what we're discussing. We're probably not going to discuss the bottom tier teams. We all know what we're expecting there. The top tier teams is what we're going to discuss. The top 5 to 8 teams.
Yeah, I mean, when I immediately thought about it when you brought that up to me, and I was kind of going down the list, um, when I look at when you talk about Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama, LSU, Tennessee, that's your top six, I believe, in the odds market. I mean, for them, it's all, especially the top three or four, but really those top six is playoff or but. Like they all have playoff aspirations. Like that's their goal. That's their one of their goals is to make the playoff. Like especially with it
I'm
being
going
a
to be
12-team playoff. Um, I need to add Missouri in there as well because I think their schedule
yeah.
is favorable enough they could make it as well. So especially off the season they had. So um, yeah, I think for the top, 6 or 7, probably 7 teams, I think it's for sure like they're expecting to make the playoffs, in
And
my opinion.
I
So
think that for Georgia, for sure, for Georgia, it's national championship
yeah,
game.
it's national title
It,
bust. Yeah,
they make the Final Four and lose, failure of a season. It's
yeah,
as a fan, yes, you want to win the championship. You want to win the championship. You get there, you want to win it. But you got to get there, and then once you're there, it's a toss up. It's whatever happens. A team could have an off night. Team could have the best game of their life. It's not doesn't necessarily define the exact best team that they played 5 times. Whoever will win majority of the time, but the the way that Georgia is now, if they don't make it to the national championship game, period, their fans are going to think it's a failure. Would it be? No. But would they think it is? Yes. And if they don't win it, now the way they have been going, a lot of their fans are going to say it's a failure there. But winning the national championship game it's a toss up. It could either way, one way the ball bounces. It's just how it goes. I mean, go back to USC, Texas. If Reggie Bush's dump pass to the receiver works like it did 5 other times that year, we're never talking about Vince Young running in the corner of the end zone. So it just anything can happen in championship games. So getting there for Georgia, I think, is the only way that their season is defined as a success. I think they may be the only team, probably Texas would fall in that category too, because they made it to the playoffs last year. Now they're trying to get better than what they were last year, so they want to make it past the Final Four. So I think Texas and Georgia for sure is national championship game, and if they don't make the national championship game, I think it's a failure of a season in the eyes of from a large scope anyway.
yeah. I mean, I agree. I'm looking at the over/under win totals right now. You're looking at let's see,
Is
I
Georgia
believe
11.5?
yeah, Georgia. Let's see, I think they are. So they're over under 10.5. They're the highest. Them and Texas are the highest at 10.5. I believe, let's see, at Tennessee's at 9.5. Ole Miss is at 9.5. Alabama's at 9.5. LSU's at 9.5. Missouri's at 9.5. So you're talking about what 7 teams with over under 9.5 or higher. Like, so if you're in that 9 to 10 range, like you're going to be either in the playoff or right there on the cut line, basically. So, I mean, that's why I think for the top 7 teams or so, like they're expecting to make the playoffs for sure. And as you said,
1,000%.
the top 2 or 3 are certainly, expecting to make it or it's gonna be a huge failure if they didn't. But yeah, I think the top 7 or so, they're expecting to make it, and obviously all 7 are not going to make it.
Right.
But yeah, that's to me, and the league is the top half is extremely extremely strong, and that's not even mentioning teams, like Oklahoma, who's got a really good roster. Texas A&M's at 8.5 over under wins. Think I think with Auburn's schedule, they could possibly make some noise as well. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of teams jockeying position for there. From 3 and 4 on back through 8 or 9, it's gonna be insane. But yeah, I think top 7's for sure got playoff or bust, mentality.
I think, and I could be wrong, because obviously I'm not seeing it from as an Alabama fan, but with it being a new coach, what they did last year, kind of a semi mass exodus of big time players. I mean, your guy that led you in receptions is gone. Your best defensive your best defensive back's gone. So I think that Alabama has a successful season if they make it to the playoffs in one of the top four ranks. If they don't, they get a bye in the first round. I think that is anything after that, no matter what. I think if they get by and they have a bye in the first round, I think that's viewed as a success with a brand new coach. Yes, he took his team to the playoff last year, but it's a completely different ball game. New roster, you're having to learn new guys, new coaching staff. So I think that's viewed as a success. I think 9 wins or more is a success for Alabama with the scenario that they're going through, the situation they're in right now. I think anything 9 or better is a success, and I think anything 8 or lower is a failure to me. I know I'm not viewing it as a fan and having all the emotional attachment that goes along with it like I will at Auburn. But that's a genuine. I think they'll be better than 9 wins. I do, but I think if they get 9 or more, it's a successful season, especially after the last season they just had and everything on the off season that's happened.
Yeah, I think. I mean, kind of like some of the other teams. I mean, it's not obviously quite as national title as bust or as like Georgia is. You know, like you said, with the circumstances the way it is, coaching change. You know, a lot of roster changes. You know, it takes some time to implement. You know, new systems, whole new coaching staff, basically new. You know, principle, you know, just the way your offensive scheme's going to be, your defensive schemes changed. Um, I do think having some of those leadership guys hang over from, you know, the Saban era, you know, the Tyler Bookers, the Malachi Moores, the Deontay Lawson, Jalen Milrow. Like, I think there is a great leadership core there. So, to me, I mean, I think it, like some of the top teams, it's definitely playoff or bust. Like, I think they're absolutely like, I think the fan base will view it like if they don't make the playoffs, it'll be a pretty big letdown. Um, you know, so I've really felt like 10-2, like since the dude took over. I've been like, I think they get 10. I don't know, 10-2 just seems like a sweet spot. You know what I mean? Like it's still really good, but it's not like you're not gonna run the table or anything. Like I've felt this way for months. I think they go in as about a 7 or 8 seed, playing their best ball going into the playoffs. And like I think they hit their stride late in the year. Once they kind of get a few things figured out. So yeah, I definitely think it's playoff or bust. Yeah, I mean if it's under 9 wins, yeah, it's definitely gonna be like definitely a big letdown for sure. But I
What if they
mean,
get 9 wins, don't make the playoffs? I don't think a 9 win team's making the playoffs. If a 9 win team does make the playoffs, it'll be an SEC team. But I
yeah.
don't think one will. What if Bama wins 9 games?
I
Not
mean,
counting bowl, 9 regular season games, going to a bowl, they'll win the 10th one, whatever.
yeah. I mean, I think it really depends on like what the circumstances are a little bit too. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I do think it would be. I mean, just sitting here tonight, not knowing the circumstances, I think that would be a slight letdown. You know, it wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, like that's just horrible. But I think like if they did miss the playoffs, it would be a letdown. Like sitting here tonight, you know, not like if they had a bunch of injuries and something happened and they won 9 games. Like you'd have to know the circumstances. But as like sitting here on June 3rd, it'd be a letdown if they didn't make the playoffs. And it's certainly a possibility. Like it's a very tough schedule. You got to play Georgia. The road schedule is really tough at Wisconsin, at Tennessee, at LSU, at Oklahoma. Like that's no walk in the park. So it very well could be 9-3. But I do think the talent is there enough. Like this is still saw a graphic today. I think they have the most 5 stars of anybody on their current roster right now. I think with 15. I think Georgia's got like 13 or 14. It's real close, but I mean, it's still one of the most talented rosters in the country. It's just going to be really young in some spots, but Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I would say a little bit of a letdown sitting here tonight if you told me 9-3. But then again,
I don't think they're going to win. I think they're going to win 10 or more. I really do. I think they at least win 10 games.
it wouldn't be monumental because, like I said, the schedule is really tough and the circumstances we laid out, like it's very possible that could happen. I mean, that wouldn't be like earth shattering or anything. Um, but yeah, I think, like I said, the top seven, even though they're all not going to make it, they're all got playoff, aspirations. Even a team like LSU, they had a really good season last year. Their defense was a mess. Um, they feel like they're right there knocking on the door if they can make a few tweaks. Tennessee, like of the teams in the top 6 or 7, like in the odds market, that's a team that's kind of a sleeper. Like they really could, make some noise potentially. So yeah,
I'm
they're
not fully bought in on them. I think they're going to be really good, but I think the way I just described how Alabama will be a successful season, I think the same thing of them. I think if they get 9 wins or more, it's a success. 8 or less, it's a failure. I'm just not fully bought in because we haven't seen enough of Nico. That's my only. I know he's going to be really good, and I think Tennessee is going to be good. I mean, I had him. I had him 4. I think they're going to be really good, but I'm not completely sold on them. That I think that they're going to be national championship fully. I think that they may make the playoffs. I think they have a good chance to make the playoffs, but I don't know that they'll make a deep run to like the Final Four or anything.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's really fair because I mean, with there's still some unknowns there, like obviously an inexperienced quarterback still, their defense, even though I think they've upgraded that, you still want to see it on the field. So, yeah, I just think of like of the teams that are not considered like a top contender,
Right.
of the top like 2. I think that's a team that could make some
Oh
noise.
yeah.
I think the schedule shakes out pretty good for them. They got Alabama at home again. They got Florida at home as well. They do go to Athens, but other than that, I feel like it's I think they go to OU maybe, which I'm very excited for that game. Heupel going back to Oklahoma will be very interesting. So I think that's like week 4. But yeah, I think yeah, I wouldn't put them, championship contender or anything. But yeah, I think any of that top 7 is gonna be right there in the mix in that top, 15, 16, 18 range. Like there's a lot of teams gonna be fighting for it. I think the odds market's kind of showing that out a little bit.
I gotta know. Ole Miss. To me, because I have zero emotional attachment, I can genuinely look at this from just an honest perspective of a fan of college football. I think if they make the playoffs, it is a success 100%. I get that Lane Kiffin has hyped himself up and has hyped up their roster, and they have a lot of media coverage, and he's feeding into the media. A lot of people are not really sure on what they think about it. I know they're expected to be really good. They're returning a lot of guys, but it's still Ole Miss. Like it's not a top 5 program in college football of all time. Like it is still Ole Miss. So I think if they make the playoffs, it's a success. But I also think if they make the playoffs, they're not going one and done. I really think they have a chance to make a run, at least to the second round, whether it be the 8 teams or whatever it would be. So I think they at least get to the playoffs for sure. But if they don't make the playoffs, failure, 100%. But if they make the playoffs, it's a success in my eyes from just a genuine college football fan perspective. I get all the hype, what everybody's expecting from them, but it's Ole Miss. We have to look at that at what will it be a success for Ole Miss? Yes, it will be. Their fans might think it's not, but they're delusional to think that it wouldn't be a success because it'd be the best thing that ever happened to their football program in history. They might be upset about it because the expectations are higher, but they're delusional if they say they would be upset if they made the playoffs. And if they are upset, they're an idiot and I hate them. But I think that that's a realistic. They make the playoffs, it's a success. They don't, it's a failure.
Yeah, I mean, they're certainly one I would consider playoff or bust, definitely. Like I said, I think it. I mean, just like you said, from an outside perspective, with no emotional attachment to them, like they made the playoffs, I'll be like, man, that's a really good year,
Yeah.
obviously.
Extend Kiffin.
I
Give him
I
an
think
extension.
if I'm in there, like if I'm looking at it from being in their shoes, they're like say for example, if they like snuck into one of the final 2 spots or whatever, and then they get kind of not beat down necessarily, but they get kind of handled, put out in the first game, first round, whatever, then I could see them going, yeah, I mean, obviously great to make the playoffs, but just we didn't really make any noise. We were one of the last, team or two in. I think something like that would be considered a disappointment. But like if they're squarely in it, they're in the top 10, and they say they win a game, like win that first round matchup, something like that. Obviously, I think it'd be a huge success. Regardless, I think making the playoffs would definitely be a success, no doubt about it. But I do think all the chips they put into it, because they've really, they've invested a lot of NIL dollars into this team with the quarterback coming back, with all the skill they got on offense. They put so much money into that defense. I do think if they don't make some sort of run, I do think it. But like I said, I think it just depends on circumstances, really. But yeah, obviously they're definitely in playoff or bust mentality, 100%.
All right, I got a question. When you were talking about it, it made me think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how the 12 teams going to work? The top 4 teams are going to get a bye in the first round.
Yeah.
So seed 5, 6, 7, and 8 are going to host seed 9, 10, 11, and 12 at their home field.
Yes, that's right.
So schools will get to sell tickets. They'll get to have concessions. They'll get to have the parking paying and all that stuff. It just food for thought here. Is it not more beneficial for your team to finish 5 through 8? Because you have the home field advantage in the playoffs. I know you have to play an extra game, so that's a disadvantage. But you have the home field advantage, and your team and your school gets to make more money. Why would they not have the first round host, the second round host, then the final 2 rounds be like it is now, and be at the bowl places, and they have the final 4 and then the championship game, just like it is now? I get it's more money. All the bowl people want more money, but there's a little more benefit for the school, to me, to finish 5 through 8. The only downfall would be the game, the extra game, and obviously that's a big factor. But when it comes to financials and everything else, you're getting punished, I feel like, for finishing 1 through 4 because you're not getting those extra dollars for being the best team. I could be coming from a sideways perspective. I just have been thinking about that. When you said it, I started thinking about it. I'm like, that just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, that was actually, I don't have the footage offhand right now. That was exactly what I said when this 12-team playoff format came out. We were talking about that. I was like, the only thing I really just don't like about this format is so you've got technically 4 rounds now.
Right.
You've got the first, second, then the semifinals, finals, just like we have now. My only gripe was, okay, you're playing, like you said, 5 through 8 is hosting 9 through 12 in the first round on campus. Then the second round immediately moves to a neutral site, just like we do for the semifinals. So basically the second round, the semifinals, and the championship game are all neutral sites. I just didn't understand, instead of having to make the teams and fan bases travel that much more, going to 3 neutral site games potentially, why would you just not do the first 2 rounds on campus? That way, seeds 1 through 4 can actually host a home playoff game that they rightfully earned.
Yeah.
But it just didn't make any sense to me. Like you said, the 5 through 9, even though they have to play an extra game, so I mean, obviously, that hurts them a little bit having to play extra game, but they get rewarded with a home playoff game. But seeds 1 through 4 don't get a home playoff game. That, to me, that just doesn't make any sense. So I would have liked to have seen rounds 1 and 2 be at home campuses, and then the semifinals and championship being just like it is now at neutral sites. I think that would make the most sense to me. But
it would make for better TV because the environment would be better. Like, the environments are good at the bowl or the neutral site fields, wherever the bowl fields, but they're not as good because, just being honest, it's the rich fans who are in there that are watching the game. There are some average Joe sprinkled in there, but the majority of the fans that are at those games are the rich people. It's not the guys that are going to be out there drunk off their tail midday, screaming and hollering, having the greatest time, creating a great environment. It's still a good environment, but it's not the same as if it is when it's on campus. It's not the same fans that are in there. So I think it would make the product even better. And then obviously you get why the semifinals and championship is the way it is. It's how it's always been. It's how it's always going to be. But I'm with you there. And it's like it's more beneficial. There's more to play for playing 5 through 8, except for the extra game, which I'm saying except for the extra game, like it's a little bitty blip. It's a huge blip on the whole radar. It's the whole main thing. But there's no incentive to be 1 through 4. There's not an extra incentive that there should be, because like you said, they earned it. They should earn that right to host when the teams that are finishing below them are getting the right to host or getting the ability to host.
Yeah, I just would like to have seen, teams 1 through 4, like they earned a top 4 seed. Like the fact they don't get a home playoff game, like yes, they get a bye to the quarterfinals, which is a huge advantage, no doubt.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, like in the NFL, the top 2 seeds get buys to the second round or whatever, but then they get to host a home playoff game. Like they because they earn that, you know what I mean? So it's like, to me, yes, I mean it is, like I said, a huge advantage getting a bye to the quarterfinals, but at the same time, it's like now you're asking your team to go to potentially 3 different neutral sites in a row, and your fans. Like to me, like seeds 1 through 4, they earn the right to have a home playoff game. Like, can you imagine how hype that will be? Like Athens hosting the number 8 team in a home playoff game or whatever. Like that'd be crazy.
The way it is now, honestly, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Oklahoma, teams like that, they're probably never going to host one. Oklahoma probably will, but the way things are right now, if they keep trending this way, those teams will never host a playoff game, because those are the teams that are probably going to finish top 4 majority of the time. You can throw Michigan in there. I don't think they're going to be that good this year. I think they're going to be good, but not up there in the top 4. But just the teams like that, it's like those are the best teams, the top dogs, and they're not ever getting to host a home playoff game just because of how it's set up. I think it makes no sense.
Yeah, that's the only. I mean, I don't really have a huge gripe with the format. That is the one change I would make. To me, that would make a lot more sense than how it is
and
now.
It makes it harder on the 12th or 9 through 12, because they would have to go back-to-back road games, and it's like you don't want to have that tough of an experience. Finish higher than 9 through 12. Like it's just I don't know. Usually the endings of seasons and how things play out in the postseason is incentive based of extra things that pile on to you winning or finishing in first place or being able to host. There's extra incentives added onto that just gives you more motivation to want to do it. There's no extra incentive to finish in 1 through 4 except for the bye, which is a big incentive. But we get what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I would like to put an extra premium on the 1 through 4, like like hey, we're a 1 through 4 seed, so we're guaranteed like we get a bye and we're hosting a home playoff game to go to the semifinals, basically. So, that's the one change I would make, but obviously I don't think that's going to happen right now. But so we'll take what we get, but So I guess one good thing is like, hey, if you aren't 1 through 4, if you're 5 through 9, you get to host a first round playoff game, which would be pretty cool. So that never happened. So I am looking forward to seeing some of those atmospheres.
Yeah.
For the first time. That's going to be really, really interesting.
I did kind of get off a little bit. Oh, we can go back to it, but what about Texas A&M? I just kind of want to get back to what we were talking about, the expectations. Mike Elko's coming in there, brand new coach. Connor Wigman, he's expected, if he stays healthy, to be a top quarterback in the SEC. What are we expecting from Texas A&M? Would be a success or a failure for you? Because they do have a really, really, really good roster. It's just it's the brand new coach, and they weren't proven. It's different than DeBoer coming in being a new coach because it's a proven team. It's a proven place. Texas A&M is not, so it's different. I think 8 wins is success. 7 wins, honestly, success. But I think 8 wins are better to success, 7 or lower, disappointment to failure.
Yeah, I mean, they're over unders at 8.5. So I feel like, yeah,
Damn,
I think anything 8 or better would be like really, really good, honestly. I mean, I just think with, like you said, it's a good roster and they've made some good additions too, but it's just like you said, it's not a proven winner yet. You
right.
know, I think the guys on that team haven't really won at a high level together yet. Like you mentioned, some of the guys that on Alabama's roster, they've won at a high level for multiple years. You know, not all of them have because it is a lot of new faces, but at the same time, you know, the core that is that there's a big core there that even if it's just been for a year or two, has won at a high level, been to a playoff or been to multiple playoffs potentially. But yeah, with A&M, I think, like I said, it's a very talented roster still, but it's just not exactly proven yet. So yeah, I think anything 8 or above would be a pretty good first step in the right direction. I think, like you said, maybe 7 depending on circumstances possibly, but yeah, I think they're definitely feeling like, hey, we need to be at least 8 would be my benchmark. And
And
I'm
I'm
sure Aggie fans feel that
yeah.
same way too.
And then the last one that I want to talk about, or that I was thinking about it, I'm really is not is less their expectations because there's not really a whole lot of expectations around this program. But what is the number of wins Arkansas has to get to keep Sam Pittman from getting fired?
Ooh,
What's the number that gets him fired, and by what date? And what number do they have to get to for him to keep his job?
that's a really good question. I'm actually gonna pull their schedule up. Let me check. Let's say their over under is 4.5. So let's see.
And I
Arkansas.
think if he's on pace to have 4.5 or 4 or 5 wins in the season, I think if he's on that pace, then he's gone before Halloween.
So let's see. Their Arkansas Pine Bluff, week 1. I believe this is at Oklahoma State. I guess that's a true road game. Let me make 100% sure here if that's a yeah, that's a road game at a true road game at Oklahoma State, hosting UAB, at Auburn, Texas A&M and Dallas, hosting Tennessee, then a bye week, hosting LSU at Mississippi State, Ole Miss, hosting Texas, Louisiana Tech at Missouri.
I've got them
Ooh.
going 4-8, and that's just off the games that they absolutely should win. Doesn't mean they will. They should win them. So I got them going 4-8. Just off when you were ripping them, I was counting them on my fingers. Yeah, I think that they got to have 8 wins for him to keep his job. And I think that if by week 5 or 6 they have 1 or 2 wins, he's gone. He's out the door. Petrino's going to take over as interim. I think that's what's going to happen if he's, at that number. But he's got to have 8 wins or more to keep his job. And I don't even know if 8 wins has him keeping his job.
If that is the case, like if 8 wins is saving his job, he might as well pack his bags now. He's not getting 8.
Yeah. I
Snowball
think
chance
anything
in
less than
hell
8,
he
he's
gets 8.
gone, dude. Yeah.
In my opinion, like if what you're saying is true, and if you're what's their AD's name or Yarchak or whatever his name is, if he's sitting there now like Sam has got to win 8 to, for me not to fire his ass, he ain't getting 8. No way he gets 8 with the schedule, in my opinion.
Maybe 7. But if I'm thinking if he has 7 wins or less, he's gone. But maybe 7 keeps his job. But anything below 7, for sure, he is out the door because he's won
Honestly, I
9
don't
games there.
think.
He's done it.
Honestly, I don't think he's getting 7 either. I don't think he hits 7. To be honest with
I
you,
think he's gone before Halloween. If I was betting on it right now, I would put it that he's out before Halloween. Honestly, but I think he's got to win 8 or more
well,
because
I
he's
think you're.
won
I
9.
think
He has been there.
well, if LSU drums them on homecoming, which is October 19th, possibly, I think your Halloween prediction could be right because they go to Starkville October 26th. If he loses that, he's probably done lost a bunch before that. Yeah, he's toast.
He
He needs
loses
to
to Mississippi
win.
State in what they're expected to be this year with a new coach and a brand new roster. Yeah, and the second new coach in 2 years. If they lose to them, I know it's at Mississippi State, but it is at Mississippi State, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, but I know it's there. But if they lose to them, yeah, 100%, he's gone out the door. Fire his ass immediately.
Yeah, and I hate it too. I don't want that to happen. I'm pulling for Pittman. I would love to be wrong and he wins 8. I think that'd be awesome, but I just don't see it. I don't say. I think he loses at Oklahoma State probably. Probably, I guess he beats UAB and Arkansas Pine Bluff. He's gonna get beat at Auburn probably, more than likely. He's
He better.
probably gonna lose to A&M, Tennessee, LSU. I think he's losing all those. Yeah, if he gets beat at State, yeah, there's gonna be no trick or treat Fayetteville. He's out. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think I think I mean he would need at least 6, 7, 8. I don't think he gets 8, but I don't know. Maybe I really don't know. That's a good question. Like how many does he have to have? I really don't know the answer to that. I do think he needs to. It needs to look better for sure.
Yeah.
His defense needs to look better. Um, we'll see. I'm pulling for him, man. I would love to be wrong and he win 8 games. I think it'd be incredible. I love to see him stay there. I
Yeah,
just
I'm a
that
big fan.
schedule, and I just don't think they got the roster. I mean the roster. I mean the a lot of those teams are just better.
Yeah,
Plain and
absolutely. I'm
simple.
with you. I hate it for him because I'm a big fan of Sam Pittman, but he had the momentum going. He just couldn't ride it and keep it going. So,
It's tough, man. That's a tough job too.
but
That's a
it's
real tough
also
job.
the nicest job in the world being a fired SEC football coach. So he's going to be fine.
Yeah,
But we did want to talk about newcomers and maybe whether it be freshmen or guys out of the portal that haven't played a whole lot. The two guys that I really grabbed my eye that I really wanted to talk about were both out of the portal. Saw flashes of one of them, didn't see a whole lot of the other one. And then Cam's he's got some freshmen and some guys out of the portal he wants to talk about. But the biggest name to me, I know Walker Nolan's a big name out of the transfer portal going to Ole Miss, and but the biggest name to me that I think is going to make the biggest impact is Des Ricks, man, going to Texas A&M from Alabama. Didn't get a whole lot of playing time in Alabama as expected. You know, he's behind Kool-Aid McKinstry and Tavon. What's his name?
Terrion Arnold.
Terrion Arnold.
Yeah.
He's behind those two guys. Didn't really see a whole lot of playing time. Was expected to play a lot for Alabama this year when Saban bounced. He decided to hit the portal, and I think he's going to do amazing for Texas A&M. He's going to play a lot. I think he's going to be their best defensive guy. So I expect to see good things from him. I think he's going to make be one of the best guys out of the portal. But I'm glad to see talent leave Tuscaloosa anytime.
Yeah, hey, that's a guy I definitely want to keep, man. I think he would have been really good. I think he's going to be really good there at A&M. Couple freshmen, man. I mean, I feel like some of these are kind of obvious, but I think starting in Athens with Ellis Robinson the fourth. I mean, one of the best defensive backs in this class. I believe the top ranked defensive back in this class. I think he's a guy that could come in immediately, make a huge impact in that room. You know, you've seen that before. Guys like Malachi Starks, you know, as a freshman. I think it was that I believe it was that Oregon game where he kind of burst on the scene week one. You know, so I mean, even at programs like Georgia, like Alabama, like Texas, like if you're that dude, they will put you on the field early, and I think he's that caliber of guy. So I'm really curious to see, you know, what impact he can make, you know, immediately there. I mean, another guy. I mean, I gotta say it, Cam Coleman gonna make an immediate impact. We know this already. We've known this for months. Uh, he's gonna be a huge impact player for that Auburn offense. They haven't had a guy like that in a long time of that caliber of talent. So yeah, you know that you just have some dudes when they walk in And like, yeah, this dude's a difference maker. Like, soon as he walks in the building, you know that. We've been knowing that for a while. Think obviously he's set to make a big impact this year. Think another guy reclassified,
Mhm.
but kind of out of that same, same ilk, out of the state of Alabama, and Ryan Williams. I think that receiver room at Alabama, I think he's got a chance to make an immediate impact. I think there's
Oh,
even the injury to Jalen Hale, a true sophomore, had a pretty bad leg injury in spring. I think, um, there's some really good talent in that room, but there's some inexperience behind those top two or three guys. You got, Kendrick Law, Kobe Prentice, Jeremy Bernard, the transfer from Washington. Like those three guys, like are going to play a bulk of the minutes, a bulk of the snaps there. But a guy like Ryan Williams, I think, is probably just going to be too good to keep off the field. So I think he's got a chance to make an immediate impact as well. So really excited for a few of those guys. Another guy I want to talk about, defensive lineman from Missouri, Williams Nwaneri. They lost quite a few guys at that defensive line position, two or three big time contributors. He was a guy, one of the top defensive linemen in this cycle. I think he's got a chance to make an instant impact there at Missouri, a team that's a playoff caliber. They have aspirations of another double digit win season. Um, like I said, playoff, intentions and aspirations. I think he's a guy that can come in and contribute there early, make a big impact on the Missouri defensive line. And then another high quality wide receiver in this past cycle is Mike Matthews. Um, there's some developing talent in that Tennessee wide receiver room. Squirrel White has come in, made a big impact there. But I think he's a young guy that can come in, add to that room, give Nico another weapon to throw to. And like I said, I think with Nico at the helm now and some of the wide receiver talent they've been able to accumulate there, I think they really have the chance to get back to that Tennessee offense of 2 years ago. And I think Mike Matthews can be a really big part of that. So I'm excited to see a lot of these guys, the impact they make. A lot of these guys are, high end talent in this class. And I think they're filling some positions of need on these rosters, like at Auburn at wide receiver, like Alabama at wide receiver, Missouri at defensive line, Tennessee at receiver. I think this could be a year where you see a lot of big time, young, wide receivers emerge in this league and kind of become that next generation of great, wideouts this conference has gotten accustomed to. And I think we got a few guys that are really gonna, be able to showcase that and are in positions of need that their team really needs them to kind of come in and make an impact early. I think we're going to see that.
yeah, another guy that I think out of the transfer portal that's going to make a big impact. We saw a decent amount of him last year at Vanderbilt, but London Humphreys, wide receiver, transferring to Georgia. Pretty much Kirby's trying to find his replacement for Lad McConkey is what it seems. Another white boy going down there to Athens to play receiver for them. He was number 2 on Vanderbilt last year in receptions. So they're getting the guy, he's a true freshman last year, got, a lot of ball left to play. So I think that obviously a guy like this, we saw him burst on the scene last year at Vanderbilt, and he did really well. I believe he had 4 or 5 touchdowns, a little over 400 yards receiving, or a little over 600 yards receiving, excuse me. I think that he has a really good chance to have a really, really good breakout year this year. And Georgia needs some guys to step up at wide receiver. They got a lot of guys there, that aren't proven. They lost some guys over the last few years that's played a lot of snaps for them. So I'm excited to see what London Humphreys can do for the Bulldogs.
Another transfer just to add also at Georgia, filling that, obviously they have a deep, tight end room there, but Benjamin Urasek, the Stanford tight end transfer, I think he's going to come in and really make a name for himself. Obviously that's been a great position for Georgia for a while now. Over the last, handful of years, I think he can come in and make a big impact there as well as a pass catcher for Carlton Beck. And I just think it's a good a tight end is just a good fit in that offense too.
Absolutely.
They're going to get targets. Especially having a quarterback of that caliber as well. We saw how comfortable he was throwing to Brock Bowers, and obviously there's not many Brock Bowers around at all. But I think Benjamin Uriset's going to come in and really make a good impact. And I like what Georgia's done at receiver and tight end. They're kind of retooling those positions for Carson Beck. I think he's going to have some really good weapons to throw to this year, and I'm expecting really big things out of him.
Absolutely.
But we just want to say before we wrap up, we really appreciate everyone tuning in. Be sure to follow us on social media on Twitter at Saturdays_SEC. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Like I said, be sure to reach out on either platform in the comments or reaching out on Twitter. Just giving us y'all's thoughts. We're always looking for input and looking to hear what y'all have to say and other people have to say as well. So yeah, just be sure to reach out, give us your thoughts on what some expectations are that you have for some of these SEC teams. Are they playoff or bust? Is 8 or 9 wins good enough in some cases? Like I said, what are some guys that y'all expect to burst on the scene this year and make instant impacts? If anybody can nail the Brock Bowers prediction from a couple years ago like Carden has, they got an instant invite to come on this podcast.
Yeah.
So be sure to throw it out there. If y'all got a guy that's maybe a little under the radar that can make an instant impact, I don't know if anybody's going to be able to top that one.
I got lucky.
I'll be honest. I didn't know. I'd heard the name, but I really had no clue who Brock Bowers was before you said that. And then they immediately played Clemson, and you're like, oh, I was like, I'm sure it even surprised you. Like, man, I didn't know Brock Bowers was this good. But
I read about
sure
how good
Kirby Smart didn't either.
Yeah. I read about it, but I didn't know he was going to turn out to be that good.
Yeah, but he was a dude. But anyways, we appreciate everyone tuning in. We'll catch y'all back next time.
Thank you, guys.